Hey there, I'm Nathan, one of the knife nerds at Knifewear, where we sharpen your minds about Japanese knives. This is a honesuki, a gyuto, a boning knife, and a shjihiki. Each one of these handmade Japanese knives has a special purpose when it comes to cutting meat in your kitchen. Now, professional chefs use these knives to make their jobs easier, so it makes sense that home chefs can benefit from them too. So today, I'll show you how to use these meat knives for both prep and carving in your kitchen. So we're going to start off with this beautiful chicken and Japanese poultry knife known as a honesuki. This particular one is a Fujimoto Hanasuki. I think it's my personal favorite. So, great thing about the honesuki is designed with a real pointy tip that's nice and thin for precision work, but the heel is a lot thicker than most Japanese knives. Generally, you don't want to work around bones with Japanese knives because they can chip more easily. And so the honesuki is designed to be able to handle that kind of wear and tear as long as you're using it properly. So we're going to start by opening up this area in the legs there, just by making a small slit with the knife right between the breast and the thigh, just to get that skin opened up. And this is just going to allow us to detach the legs more easily. Now before we remove the legs, we're going to take the breast off because this guy can roll around really easily and the legs are going to help us with our stability. So for starters, we're going to flip Mr. Chicken over. We're going to get in right behind the wing here, just with the tip of the knife, just work in towards the bone. Once you've got it kind of detached, right there you can see how sharp and how easily this knife cuts in. We're just going to gently work that drumstick away from the back of the chicken. Set him over here. Same thing on the other side, just tip the knife right in behind the knuckle there. If you run into a bone, don't keep pushing, just pull your knife back and try a slightly different approach. And you just want to gently work around until you've got that joint isolated. Now to remove the breast of the chicken, we're going to flip them back over. And we've got this nice white line down the middle, which is a great visual indicator as to where the two parts of the breast separate. So we're going to take the tip of the honesuki again. You'll notice most of the work is with the tip here. We're going to just draw it gently across that white line. And it's going to naturally go onto one of the two sides of the keel bone. And so once we've got it slightly separated, we just keep following along that side until we feel it hit the breastplate, which is the part of the chicken that sort of fills in the rib cage there. Now we're going to open up back here so we're not running into any skin there. And then we're just going to sneak our knife in and just kind of work under the breast. We're just going to use, again, the tip of that knife, gently prying the meat away as we go. And I'm just working in small little cuts here. All the knife is doing is just gently liberating that meat from the bone. And then the tricky area here is our wishbone. Got a little bone that's kind of strung into the breast there. So we're just going to find them. We're going to work our knife up and under and make sure obviously our other hand isn't in the way. And we're just going to gently scoop around that and then come in along the other side of the wishbone. And we've got our breast removed from the wishbone. And you can see I'm just making small little precise cuts here. I'm not trying to do any grand sweeping strokes, just working in small sections. And then we've got our chicken breast. So we've got empty rib cage here, wings are removed. We're just going to take off the legs now. So we're going to flip them over. We're going to do what I like to call the chiropractor move. So we're going to find that really nice oyster there, where it's nice and squishy, muscle. And then we're going to go down from there a little bit where we've got the hip joint. And we're just going to put our thumb in there and just disconnect. Real easy. Then we use the knife to draw a straight line across the top of the oysters, like so. And now this oyster meat is one of the most flavorful parts of the chicken. It's one of the muscles that does the most work, and that always equals more flavor. So we're just going to work gently in underneath that oyster. The number one criminal offense you can make in a kitchen is wasting the oyster of a chicken. Again, just using the tip of the knife, gentle scooping motion. As we get towards the hip joint there, we want to pay attention to to where the bone is and where the cartilage is, because that's going to allow us to find the spot that we just slipped the knife into. Again, nice and easy. And then I like to pull the meat up and let gravity do the rest of the work. Just gently gliding that knife along the back. So next, we got this big boy, pork shoulder. So, pork shoulder has a great big bone in it. And normally, if you're just smoking it long term, making pulled pork or braising it, you probably want to leave that bone in. It's going to bring in more flavor. From what I've heard, it helps preserve some of the moisture. So this time around, we're going to use a different knife. We're going to use what's called a boning knife. Now, what's the difference between a boning knife and a Hanasuki? This is a more European style boning knife. You probably noticed earlier, the Hanasuki has quite a thick back, so it's a very rigid blade. There's no bend to it, and it's a fairly tall blade as well. Now that's great for a lot of things, especially the chicken I was doing earlier. However, when you're getting in and around a bone that's surrounded by meat, doing what's often called tunnel boning, the Hanasuki is going to fall a bit short. It doesn't have any flexibility, unlike this guy, and it's not nice and skinny. So we're going to use the tip of the knife, and we're going to be very precise, similar to how we were doing the chicken, removing the breast from the breastplate, just scraping in along the bone and trying to very precisely slip the knife between the meat and the bone. So this can be a bit of a slow process, especially if you're a bit out of practice like me, but it's better to go slow. Avoid cutting towards yourself. When you're using a beautifully sharp knife, butchery can be a really, really fun activity. When you're using a knife that's not sharp, it's awful. Everything slides around and you don't get to have fun with it. So keep your knife sharp, and if you don't have a good sharp knife, it's worth upgrading. You'll notice I'm mostly holding the knife just kind of with a chef's grip, and I'm getting my finger up on the tip for precision a lot. Depending on how you're cutting, you can also do this, as they call it, pistol grip. You'll see a lot of butchers doing this. This is nice because it allows you to cut away from yourself. It doesn't put your wrist at an awkward angle. What I love about this knife is it's got that little bit of flexibility to it. So I can push it in against the bone and just sweep around. All right, and there we go. So that's, considering how rusty I am, that's a relatively clean bone there. So those are the two basic knives that you'd use for butchery. But coming up are two more knives that I like to use for meat, including one that is literally called a cow sword. And is there a different knife to use for carving cooked meat? So this is a Gyuto, and in Japanese, Gyuto literally translates to cow sword. So obviously this knife has a meat bias. Now truth be told, this knife is really inspired by traditional French chef's knife, and it really is just a great multi-purpose knife to have in your kitchen. That said, it's really fantastic for cutting meat, and if you're gonna have one multi-purpose knife that's gonna do it all in your kitchen, this is the knife to have. Now I've got a great little top sirloin roast here. You might be noticing that it's a little bit black, and that's actually a special charcoal rub sent from our buddy Craig. He's one of our regular viewers, so shout out to Craig for sending us this delicious spice rub. So when you're slicing cooked meat, you don't want to saw back and forth and hack it. You know that electric turkey slicer that you saw the commercial for as a kid? Those are terrible. They're the worst. They just shred your meat, and more importantly, they bring out too much of the juice. When you're slicing meat, you want nice, long, clean cuts, as long of a cut as you can make. Now, if you do want a bit more of a meat bias knife, and you're a real carnivore that's gonna get a lot of use out of a specialty meat knife, there's no harm in going for a shjihiki. Shjihiki is a much longer, skinnier slicing blade, and the name, if I'm not mistaken, literally translates to flesh slicer. And so the shjihiki is gonna allow you to make those longer, cleaner cuts that's gonna allow more of the juices to stay in your meat. That's gonna give you better tasting meat, better looking meat as well. You can see, look at that looks all nice and even. You can see a couple of cut marks, but it's not all sawn and hacked up. Again, just long, clean cuts with the shjihiki. Okay, so lastly, I'm gonna show you how to handle smaller cooked proteins. Things you don't necessarily need a great big knife for. Things like, pork tenderloin or a chicken breast. This is a breast from the chicken I butchered up earlier, just threw it in the office toaster oven and here we are. So a Gyuto is a really great knife for these smaller pieces of protein because it does have that size advantage and you can get these really nice long clean cuts, and the momentum of the knife is going to do a lot of the work for you. Just look at how easily that goes. Now a knife you'll see often used for smaller proteins, especially in professional kitchens and cramped quarters, is a little petty knife. A 135 or 150 or even 180 paring knife can be really great just getting into these smaller pieces. And if you're the kind of person that's not comfortable with a great big knife, this is a great choice. So, when it comes to working with meat in your kitchen, you shouldn't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Often you can save money and end up with a more delicious product. These knives simply make that job easier and more joyful. Just like a set of golf clubs have specialty functions on the course, knives have specific jobs in the kitchen. But wait, are there specialty knives for vegetables as well? You bet there are! Make sure you click on this next video to learn all about the incredible and fun knives that you can use on your veggies.